TTB Music Podcast.
Preparation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of preparation for this podcast. This is not the old days. We just kind of rocked up and just did it. It's like,
Yes,
you know,
I know. It's wonderful.
I've actually had to head back in my house again, back in the studio.
I know, but that's what I mean. It's just like the old days.
Yeah.
We're actually back in the studio.
Two microphones,
after,
feedback.
well, I say over a year. You reckon less, but you know.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's better together. Anyway, here we are.
Yeah, podcast 3, and for a change, the reason this podcast has taken longer to do is because of me.
Yeah, it's usually me and my lame excuses.
Yes, it's just me going, oh shit, stuff's going on, you can't, yeah, no.
Life,
It's just like,
shit.
yeah, no. Anyway, so it's podcast 3.
Yeah.
And this podcast, we have albums from Demi Lovoto, called Dancing with the Devil, The Armed Ultrapop, AJ Tracey, God, what's the AJ Tracey album called?
Oh, did you? I mean, you just told me. I got to put my notes down. You said, have you got your notes? I was like, flu game.
Flu game, sorry.
You know, like the pandemic.
Jane Weaver, Flock, Julien Baker, Little Oblivions, and Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, and the London Symphony Orchestra, Promises. So as you can tell by that, if you're familiar with any of these people, quite a mixed bag musically. So we'll start with something I can definitely say is certainly pop, and Demi Lovato, the 7th album apparently by Demi Lovato, called Dancing with the Devil, and it's also a companion piece to a documentary. Well, I think she's done several documentaries about her life, but this is the 3rd one on YouTube.
Yes.
And deals with the fact that obviously she had a drug overdose a few years ago, and then let's come back and yeah. Anyway, it's a pop album, Pete. Is it a good pop album? Is it a bad pop album? Is it a pop album?
It's funny because you mentioned you know, the documentary, and my original notes. I had to go back and do this album again because we did it a while ago.
Yeah.
And I went back and did it again because I put a clear documentary of their troubles, and I didn't even know there was a documentary. No, I was oblivious. Absolutely, seriously oblivious to the fact that this was the soundtrack to a accompanying documentary on YouTube.
But in a way that already means that the album has worked quite well then, really. At least on that level, if nothing else.
On that level, if nothing else. And I'll also be absolutely honest, I'll say this up front, my first review of this album, I actually went back and scrapped because my first review of this album was not very positive at all. And maybe it was a bad week for Peter Towers. But I went back and obviously did this one a couple of times. Again, back into the rule of 3, really. You know,
it genuine does work.
It does work.
It does work.
The first time I listened to it, I slated it, but actually I've come back and I've had a rethink. I still think as an album, it's very honest, but and very sincere, very sincere, but kind of washed over me. And I still think it's too long. I do think it is too long as an album, particularly a pop album. Pop albums, I appreciate now that it is the soundtrack to an accompanying series on YouTube, but it still feels a little too long to me.
Yeah, because the thing we think if you compare it to kind of pop albums that we've liked recently, so the other thing in Dua Lipa and Sigrid, both albums that have kind of come in under 45 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah, and it convey as much, if not more. I was mostly indifferent to the pop as well. And as excited as I am to be back here live on location in real life with you, I'm a bit grumpy about some of the music tonight. That's a spoiler. Tune in, stay listening to what else I might say. But a little indifferent to the pop music, though. I thought the lyrics, actually, when I went back and had that second and third listen, were, very revealing, and obviously quite honest in terms of some of the mental anguish that clearly she's been through.
Yes.
And some of the addictions that she has, they have battled, because obviously pronouns, and actually didn't mind.
Someone's been reading up.
Someone has been doing his research only this week. Actually didn't mind at all. Anyone, which I think is the opening track.
Yes.
Written, so close around one of her more recent breakdowns.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think for me, I'm going to put in here and do a crossover thing rather than just separate thing. But yeah, I think for me that was when I first, because the opening anyone's the opening track, and when I the first time I played that, I kind of thought, Christ, this is over singing and kind of like painful over singing.
Very painful.
Type. And it's about the lyrics are like anyone, I need anyone, no one's listening to me, nobody's listening, kind of thing. Again, I kind of thinking, wow, Jesus, that's a bit much. And then, as you say, you then kind of read around it and go, oh yes, she recorded this about 5 days before she tried to top herself. And you're thinking, okay, suddenly that makes a lot of sense, and actually you can genuinely feel the emotion and the pain in her vocal, and that's why the vocal is strained and as kind of stretched as it is, because no, that's real.
Yeah, the last thing we could have heard.
Yeah.
So and the pop and the production of that is very charged as well. And there are a couple of other tracks on the album. The Art of Starting Over.
Yes.
Which sort of leans into the title of the album, not so much the documentary. And Lonely People as well had quite a sort of bounce along rhythm to it as well, which was good. I'll be absolutely honest though, even after a second or third listen, I'm kind of indifferent to the rest.
Yeah.
And I especially don't like the cover of Mad World.
I don't dislike the cover of Mad World, but there have already been too many covers of Mad World.
There's so many covers of
But then again, that's like saying you don't like covers of Yesterday in a way, I suppose.
I suppose.
It's the kind of thing, if lots of people are covering it, it means it's a good song. But I'm
blind song, but
I'm kind of agreeing with it. It's I don't, because of what's around it. I generally don't think there's any more. The opening track, Anyone, is by far the most powerful track on the album, simply because when you put it in context, you genuinely can feel the raw emotion and the trauma that this person is going through. And what I do like about this record is the fact that the first three tracks are all about that kind of breakdown and the attempted suicide bit, and then the fourth track is called Intro.
Yes.
Which then goes into the and now I've come out the other side kind of thing. And I did quite like the way that was done. I thought it was quite a clever way of doing it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I quite like the title track, which has a big slice of kind of Portishead going on in it. I thought was quite good, and then it goes into then seriously goes poppy, and very kind of laid back kind of poppy, and it's fine. It's quite nice. It's nothing that's. It then goes into something you can imagine lots of other artists doing, whether it's Pink or. Most of the people, and it sounds a kind of bit generic, I suppose. Although what other people say, which is the duet thing on the album, was got played a lot on Radio 2, which, as we know in this house, the song gets played quite a lot. So I thought that was quite a good track. But yeah, it's an okay pop record.
Yeah, I concur.
Yeah. So staying with pop, obviously, we move on to The Armed and Ultrapop. From frankly, I don't think there's a more misleading title
No.
you could possibly come up with, really.
The statement you could have made in the introduction there.
Yeah. So this is, I'm not sure, I did write down which one. I think it's the third album from this Detroit music collective. And they're one of these bands who are very secretive about even who's in or who isn't in the band. And they certainly produce stuff that's hard to ignore, it has to be said. This is kind of a very punishing mix of metalcore, white noise, punk, thrash, electropop. Sometimes seemingly all those things trying to compete all at once in various songs. And what's really weird is it starts off. This I should explain. Quite often when I pick albums for this, I pick the albums for what we review, and quite often I just like look for what's been well reviewed, without actually reading what records are about. And this one has been very well reviewed. And I thought, sounds interesting. And it starts off with something that, in fact, that could be. I almost thought it was kind of Yeasayer-esque. The opening track. It kind of goes along quite nicely, and then it goes off on one kind of big styly, big styly, and you then get a record that is a barrage of noise, occasionally almost by accident interrupted by almost catchy song appearances. So an iteration and bad selection. It's better noise moments when it tries to do a bit kind of like act a bit like Sonic Youth. I quite liked it. So Real Folk Blues I quite liked as a song. Got a couple of guest performances on there. Mark Lanigan is on the Music Becomes a Skull at the end, co-writing credit on that. Fairly certain Karen O is on Big Shell, and they've got a couple of there are always bands that have guest artists just appearing, whatever. But it has to be said, when I did listen. I got past the 3 listens on this, so 4 listens. It is 38 minutes, and it's 38 minutes that you end frankly exhausted. It is quite a relentless assault on the ears. It's an album that I kind of admire the kind of bonkersness of, but apart from a couple of tracks, so the ones mentioned, the blues one, Real Folk Blues, Bad Selection, and the opening track didn't really rock my boat.
I have to say there was a couple of tracks. An Iteration was one.
Yes, An Iteration was it's quite not bad either.
Which I really enjoyed, but to me this, I mean, it, as you say, it went on that sort of Yeasayer-esque sort of line, and then it turned into something else, and you know, the industrial, the thrash screaming, and as long-time listeners, hello all 2 of you, will know, you know, we're not averse to the thrash screaming and the sort of dark metal.
Far from it, in fact.
Far from it. And so what is there not to like? But unfortunately, I think this just lacks something in terms of how it all connects together. You know, but what it does make up for, I guess, is in terms of the production, the use of electronica, the use of sort of synth pop in there kind of makes it different. Ultrapop indeed. But definitely, you know,
Ultrapop's a genre. Yes.
It obviously has those pop elements, which is strange. So it separates it from the usual sort of thrash stuff that we have listened to. But I found it a difficult album to sort of get into, even after a couple of listens, because I just felt that I was being pulled in this direction, and I was being pulled in this direction. So yeah, it was an awkward one for me, this one.
Yes,
it's not that I don't dismiss. I just don't like it. I find it very difficult.
Yeah, it was a difficult record.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and obviously there's nothing wrong with difficult records. It's like difficult.
No.
Like all difficult art, it's good. But and clearly, judging by the reviews it's got, lots of people have gotten past that. But yeah, it's for me. It just I've found it hard to. I said it's I suppose it's a bit too disjointed
Yeah.
I suppose,
Yeah.
as an album
As an album.
rather than so, because this is obviously a genre hopping podcast,
Where we go next?
let's go to UK rap. I think, Peter.
Oh, right, okay. So we're actually going through these in the order that I reviewed them.
Oh,
Very rare.
well, don't get too calm. I might fuck with you soon. Okay, so we're going to momentarily. We're going to get AJ, Tracey, and Flu Game.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've done. It's been a while since we've done UK rap. Actually, I think we did.
It has.
I think we did the first Stormzy album. I think that might be the last time we did UK rap.
Really? Wow.
Because the last couple of rap things we've done have been American.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yes. So obviously, brilliantly titled album.
Yeah.
For a start. I mean, this is a British rapper that's got American game. I feel a sense of steering away from. So the last few albums that we have reviewed, not so much the sort of pure rap, but we've sort of gone into the sort of grime territory. We've gone into the trap territory once or twice as well. So I feel that this is pure. This is kind of back to more pure sort of. Almost say West Coast versus East Coast sort of style of.
Well, it's more poppy, and
exactly.
but that's not a disingenuous kind of slagging off nothing. But it is it's a more commercial.
It's more commercial, definitely. But it's a British artist, which is great, and it's a London artist as well, which is also great. So a positive album about dealing with insurmountable challenges. The pandemic might come into this somewhere. I feel like we've stumbled on, and I think that we're going to see more of this. I mean, we touched on this at sort of Christmas time last year. The concept of the lockdown album.
Yeah.
And there were a few floating around at that point. So albums that had been recorded in lockdown. But actually, I think this is one of the first where we're sort of seeing albums that are recorded about lockdown and the year we've been through. And I think we're just going to see so much creativity around this.
Lockdown in his pants at one point apparently.
So I mean, it skates around several sort of subgenres within there. There's musical styles, and which obviously always keeps things interesting from a production point of view, particularly on rap. Hearing different use of electronic sounds and so on. So I like that. I liked all of that. That's all good. In terms of the tracks, my favourites. Bringing It Back, obviously political. There's lyrics in there. It sort of brings together. Boris actually gets a mention. Marcus Rashford gets a mention.
Marcus Rashford does get a mention.
Get a mention as well. So obviously very current. It sort of pulls some very relevant stuff there together. But also Eurostep, number 9, West 10. We were trying to remember the postcode.
The pop hit, yes.
Yeah.
The pop hit with
it's West
Maidon,
10.
yes.
Yeah. So and that's all great. So overall, I'm struggling as I have so far with the 3 albums. So far, this is the first one I sort of thought, yeah, okay, we're good. We can do this.
Yeah, I think to use our standard cliche, it is a very very solid album.
Yeah.
It is genuinely about clearly an artist that has talent, clearly an artist that has an eye on his own sense of individuality and sticking to his London roots, whilst also realising that he wants to make sure that he sells as fucking many records as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So therefore, we're going to go, yeah,
exactly. So
bring it. Let's bring in the influences. I'm fine to that. I can do both. I can walk that line. I can do these things.
Yeah, and very well as well.
And lyrically and musically, it does. Yeah, it's. I've listened to the album several times, and whilst I'm not kind of blown away by it and not thinking, yeah, this is a must-own rap album or anything else, it's a really just. Yeah, I mean, it is that class thing when we go. Sometimes we say solid and we mean, meh, but it's solid in a good way. It's a genuinely.
Yeah.
Again, back to Lovoto, goes on a bit.
No, it's alright with this
me.
one. No, I'm okay with this one.
But bizarrely gets more poppy as the album goes on.
Yes, it does.
Which is quite funny.
Yeah.
literally the second half of the album there's a big kind of pop upswing where it's almost like most of the kind of collabs on the second half of the album, and it just does like, and it almost builds up to the Mabel thing at the end, which is like, which is pretty much led by her rather than him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I quite enjoyed it. It was pleasurable. We move on to Jane Weaver, Flock.
Seriously though, we are doing these in the order.
Oh, there you go.
We've never done this before.
So Miss Weaver is an artist who, as we were just discussing very recently, has been played many times in a certain local craft beer establishment that we've just frequented.
Would that be Part Fever?
That would be Part Fever.
Our new sponsor.
Our new sponsor, yes. Just, I prefer Part Fever, Staplehurst Road, Hither Green, SE13. Purveyors of finest craft beer. Yeah, anyway. Apparently Miss Weaver's from Birmingham, which is where the resident server of beers from this certain establishment is also from. And she's released a couple of albums beforehand. This is her latest album, and it's yeah. This is what, for me, this was one of the more interesting albums we listened to in this podcast, because I had heard some of the stuff before. I was thinking of how it would pan out, but I was thinking if you hadn't heard it before, it just starts almost like it's a compilation album, in the fact the musical styles and influences across the tracks are just kind of very different. So it starts off then in the opening track, is it Heartlow?
Mm-hmm.
Reminded me a lot of Lush. Remember Lush from late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, I remember Lush from the 90s. Yeah.
Which reminded me of my uni days, because it's very ethereal indie rock thing going on. And thinking, alright, so you're thinking, if you'd come into this album without having any knowledge of the artist, you'd go, oh, okay, this is where we're going. But then you go into the next track, and then, which is the Revolution of Subvisions, and you're suddenly thinking, okay, now we've got Kate Bush doing St. Vincent. And you know, what's going on here? And then the next track, which is the third one, you're suddenly in a golf rap, kind of 70s glam rock revisiting thing. And you're thinking, okay, sorry. What is this album about? Who is this? What is this artist about? And for me, I love that kind of stuff. I love when they just go, you know what? I'm not just going to do one kind of thing. I'm just going to go, it's a kind of pop album, but I'm just going to draw from here, 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 here. So the fourth track, it's reminded me heavily of Stereolab. In fact, I've got to be listening to Stereolab again this week. And then there's a track that sounds like Jethro Tull, and with a bit of Sandman's Orchestra, an album we reviewed about 7 years ago. And then there's bits of like the Bundu Boys, and you get this kind of African kind of guitar going on the track. I think it's Sunset Dream. All building up to Solarized at the end, which is just perfect pop.
Perfect.
I really like this album. Really like this album. It's just like, it's a really great pop record that just kind of goes, we're going to write some pop songs, and then we're just going to go pick an influence here, pick an influence there, pick an influence there, pick there, and then we're just going to choose that for that particular track and go with it, and it'll all work. And it doesn't all work, but it mostly works. Like I thought, yeah, tick.
I feel like I've been schooled, and I'll be honest, again, this is the second review of the podcast where my original notes I've just binned, because you shouldn't review anything the first time you listen to it.
Yeah.
And clearly that was the same day. I mean, it is mature pop beats. It moves along at a pretty good pace. My second line of my notes here actually says, at times, almost Goldfrappian.
There you go.
My new adjective.
Yeah.
In style. I mean, Stages of Phases and Lux being the two
Yes.
tracks that I picked out there. But at other times, less so as well. It sort of goes off into its own psychedelia area. It does its own thing. And in particular, like Heart Low was one that I pulled out. I've not heard the name Lush in years, so that's brilliant. The other for me was The Revolution of the Supervisions.
Yeah.
That's the one I played to my daughter. She goes, "Oh, this is brilliant. What's this?" Which is great because she's young and knows nothing about music.
Should play some synths.
Exactly. You know. So
certainly last, not the current synths album, the previous one. This
exactly.
This education, whatever it's called.
Yeah. So this is it. No, this is brilliant. So yeah, this has gone way up in my estimations as an album, for sure.
Good on your daughter.
No. It's not her that's wrong yet, by the way.
Okay, so next, staying with singer-songwriter ladies. Julian Baker.
Oh my God!
Yes.
We've never done this before.
Yeah.
It's in the order of my notes.
I did. You know what? I swapped the order earlier on as well. So
Did you?
this wasn't the order that I was originally going to do them in. So I've actually swapped the order earlier on.
Christ! I mean, we never do this, but I'm so excited. I'm just excited to be here.
So going to you, and I'm going to go to you with a. I mean, we've reviewed. Last year we reviewed the Phoebe Bridgers album, and she's in a kind of super group type of thing with Phoebe Bridgers and another person.
Oh yeah.
But this is I think this might be a third solo album. I did write this down. I don't know.
Let's say third.
I've written it down, but then not written it down. And this is the kind of record by somebody that if I was describing this record to people, most people would go, "Oh, it's a very Scott album." That. So therefore, I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
Without saying whether it is a Scott album or not.
So, Little Oblivions by Julien Baker has great writing and starts very. I mean, it has a piano-based collection of mature pop songs all the way through. And if you know Scott, you'll think this is very much a Scott album, which is exactly what I thought when I listened to that. Oh yes, I know this album. It's a Scott album. Again, in my original notes, we really should leave an interval between podcasts because clearly I reviewed them twice. I thought it was a little bit bland. I'm going to stick with that. Actually, it is a little bit middle of the road for me personally. That said, the second half of the album was much better. I was much more engaged by the time I got to the second half of the album. First half of the album sort of again washed over me a bit. And I was very much reminded of the sort of quieter songs by the likes of getting back to the 90s, the likes of PJ Harvey, Garbage. There was a moment in here. There's a couple of songs on that, particularly. And it's not. I'm not saying it's not typical Garbage fan. So if you're not if you're a Garbage fan, you expect Garbage loud. No, not at all. But there's sort of quieter moments. I thought again, maybe it was something in the vocals or the soundscape, the production, or something that just reminded me of that. So I particularly liked, and I say the second half. I'm sort of more sort of middle third with Faith Healer, Crying Wolf, Bloodshot.
Faith Healer's really good.
Yeah, Faith Healer is a really good song. Favour as well. So for most of the second half of the album, I suddenly really engaged again. And this was on the second listen. And then again, towards the last 2 or 3 tracks, I just sort of tailed out. Again, tapped out.
I mean, lyrically, I think it's very very strong and
yes,
very quite depressing in a lot of ways.
Yes,
because the one thing that she has done, and I think this is the third album. One thing she has done on all her albums is her lyrics are genuinely her life, and bizarrely there's a link here to the first album, the Demi Lovato album, because similarly, while she didn't have a drug overdose, she's also had problems with alcohol, and she gave up alcohol and then relapsed not long before making this album, and then back off the album. So that's all reflected in this in this kind of record, and so and you know, from the opening lines of the first song are blacked out on a weekday, still something I'm trying to avoid, start asking forgiveness in advance for all the future things I will destroy. And it's like those lines, just from those lines I was going, things have gone, and it's we lost a bit.
No.
Oh, interesting. The podcast died. Podcast just left for the first time.
I think we're still here.
There's many things that have happened in our podcast over the years.
It's the first time we've had a break, though.
But actually, then my laptop just momentarily went to sleep and actually cut out clearly the most important bit I'd said.
You were mid-sentence.
But I don't know what I said because I don't know where it's cut out. So therefore,
carry on.
That bit where I went, the bit you just missed. Oh my God, the bit you missed there.
That's what turned us both around on that.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's when Julien said, "We're never doing that again." So, moving on to our final record. Thank you, everyone says, yes. Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders and the London Symphony Orchestra. Yes, it is the London Symphony Orchestra. Yes, right. Proving that we cover pretty much any musical genre humanly possible in one podcast. This is a very, very interesting one track, 9 movement instrumental piece which brings together, as I'm sure some people will know, British electronic music producer, a DJ and musician Sam Floating Point Shepherd, sax jazz legend Pharoah Sanders, and although they're mostly hidden for the first part of this record, the London Symphony Orchestra. So basically what's going on here is Shepherd provides the kind of backbone to this piece with a musical leitmotif that repeats roughly every 10 seconds across the entire 40 minutes of the record. Although it does bizarrely fall away just towards the end of movements 8 and 8.
Yeah.
And then Sanders is playing sax across and within what's going on, and then the LSE eventually adds some kind of warmth and colour to the thing. And for me, when the album really comes alive is actually when the LSO comes in, which is on movement 6, which is when it becomes very much classical feeling and more dare I say, film soundtracky. And it just, it's almost like the piece builds up to movement 6 as a crescendo and then falls off. And here's the thing: it's like to your average punter, or indeed perhaps to your average podcast fellow person, this is probably going to be incredibly boring and tedious. But I think this is more to do with how it's listened to rather than what's being performed. For me, I found you can't listen to this with stuff going on. You can't. I tried listening to it whilst doing work, and I had it on it literally as background music, and it became literally background music. So it got to the end of the album. I literally listened to this album 2 times, and apart from the repeated leitmotif, couldn't have told you anything about it at all. Going on, there's a thing that goes on, and then there's the jazz bit, and it's like, and then I sat down on Monday night. Everyone gone to bed. Put my headphones on. Listened to this record straight through, and suddenly it genuinely would know things around me it came alive. It genuinely came alive. I suddenly kind of got it, and I was taken away and fell into the music almost, and kind of relaxed into it, and I can go, again, it's another album that's been very well reviewed. And initially I was thinking, are these people listening to the same record? And you're thinking, clearly not. But then when I was on my own with just my headphones, so you could actually hear all the intricate sounds going on, and there's little bits of light and things going on in the backgrounds of that. They're thinking, actually, no, I am kind of with this. I still think it is a bit repetitive, even within that listening environment. But within that listening environment, it's a good record. Outside of that listening environment, it's and most people aren't going to listen to it in that environment. So therefore, for most people, outside of the critical world that have gone, this is great, most people are going to go, this is shit.
This was the last record, obviously, I listened to, because I made that point several times.
Yeah, because I've done them in the order you listen to me.
It's always very difficult to review an album like this. No, we've not had that many in the times we've been doing the podcast. We've had the occasional soundtrack to this, or Trent Reznor instrumental to that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is in effect one track.
Yes,
broken into a series, literally broken into, literally one track broken into a series of movements. A very long and single track with a basic riff, as you say, that keeps repeating every few seconds. Always in the same key as well. So there's no major shift in key, which would mean normally with a soundtrack there's no major shift in mood, because it's just the same. It
has a tedium to it.
A tedium, but I almost mean that in a good way, because that sort of repetitiveness here works positively. But as you say, almost different colour comes in via the sax riffs and the jams there, via the orchestral accompaniments, and I think there was the one vocal, maybe the very occasional vocal. Oh,
yes, it's the Saxman who goes.
I think it's movement 4.
Yeah.
So for the first, to be honest, the first two movements sort of went by, and I was just like, are we on track 3 yet? It was movement 4 when I started to sort of really engage. I thought, I get it. Okay, this is what we're doing. And the album also moves at a very similar tempo. So not only is the key the same, the riff is the same, the tempo seems to be the same, but what's quite inventive is that there's an underlying shift, particularly around movement 5 into movement 6, where it's not so much a shift in tempo, because it doesn't really get quicker, but obviously the orchestra comes in movement 6, and that completely changes the characteristic of where it's going.
Just because obviously the sax disappears at that. The sax disappears at that point. And the 6 is literally just the orchestra, the strings, everything just going.
So prior to 6, you have the sax build to crescendo. You have a lot more of a sonic sounds in there as well, and then the orchestra really comes through. Then it sort of goes. I guess it goes a bit quieter again, and then in movement 8 you get the organ, which comes through, that sort of pipe organ sound, and then abruptly it ends. It just stops, but it doesn't stop because
exactly. Then goes quiet. You think it's ended. You genuinely think it's
finished. That's it.
It's like quiet for about 12 seconds, or maybe longer. Isn't it?
Yeah. It's almost a minute.
Feels longer. And then it creeps back up again.
And then it sort of comes, but when it comes back at the final movement, it's just mainly the orchestra sort of coming back through, which it then a sort of break with everything that's come before, almost in terms of the theme and so in terms of the movement of it. So that makes it really interesting. So all of that said, it's quite an interesting.
It's quite dull and tedious.
It's quite a dull and tedious, but actually very interesting record because it does all of that in 45, 47 minutes, and if you have the time, it's worth a listen. But you might want to listen to AJ Tracey instead.
Yeah, if you're going to listen to it seriously, it needs to be. You need to be in a room on your own with really good speakers, really good amp, or really good cans.
Yeah, really good cans
on your head, and just make sure no one else in the room with you.
Yeah,
and just if you do that and you listen to it and you hate it, that's fine. But the only way you're really going to get the value out of this album is
it's not casual.
That no. It probably it would probably be a good live experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So are you going for AJ as your album with the?
Oh my goodness! I really struggled, as you've probably gathered. I really struggled this time. As excited and as exciting as it is to be back together, picking an album this month has been hard.
I'm gonna.
Where are you leaning?
I've changed my mind since this morning.
I've changed my mind a few times. Go on.
I'm gonna change my mind. I'm probably going to go upbeat and poppy and go for Jane Weaver.
Do you know what? That's probably where I land as well. Yeah.
Okay, you heard it here first.
So we did end up agreeing.
After all that, yes.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Yeah.